𝗙𝗲𝗵𝗲𝗿𝘁 الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intention and the good comprehension. Allahumma ameen. One of the Salaf, those who lived within the first 300 years after the migration of the Prophet ﷺ, and that was the best time after the Prophet's time. These were the best centuries after the Prophets. One of those people, one of the Salaf, and when you hear about the Salaf, you know that they lived over 1,000 years ago. One of them said, أَلَيْسَ الْمَرِيضُ إِذَا مُنِعَ مِنَ الطَّعَامِ وَالشَّرَابِ وَالدَّوَاءِ يَمُوتُ يعني يموت هذا الإنسان. أليس المريض إذا منع من الطعام والشراب والدواء يموت؟ قيل له بلى. قال فكذلك القلب إذا منع عنه العلم والحكمة 3 أيام يموت. He said, isn't it the case that if an ill person was prevented from food, drink, and medicine, he would die? So they said yes. He said, likewise is the case of the heart. If it was prevented from knowledge and wisdom for 3 days, it dies. Meaning that the heart dies a figurative death. Even if the person is alive and blood is pumping into their veins and they're walking on top of this earth, their heart can be dead, figuratively. We seek refuge in Allah from that. And Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah raise his rank, said, من حدث بحديث فعمل به فله أجر مثل ذلك العمل. Whoever narrates a hadith and it is implemented, then he has a reward similar to the one who implemented it. Al-Hasan said to one of his students, نافس في إعلاء قيمتك بالعلم. He said, من ليس له علم فليس له قيمة. اغتنم وتعلم العلم واحضر مجالسه فمن ليس بعالم ولا متعلم فليس له منزلة رفيعة وليست فطرته سليمة. يا طالب المجد والجلالة والرفعة والمكرمات والشرف تعلم العلم واحتسبه لوجه الله لا للمعاش والحرف. He said in advising one of his students, compete to raise your worth through knowledge. Yani, if you want your value and your worth to be raised, then it is not through money and wealth and cars and houses. Rather, it is through acquiring more religious knowledge. Whoever does not have knowledge, it's as if he has no value. Seize the opportunity and learn the knowledge and attend its sessions. For whoever is not a scholar, nor a student of knowledge, then he doesn't have a high status. And his disposition is not in a good state. O seeker of glory, majesty, high rank, privilege and honor, learn the knowledge for the sake of Allah, not for making a living or a craft out of it. And it was said that knowledge is a gem if it benefits you religiously. And if we are ignorant about the knowledge, then we are not excused about being ignorant. If it was the case that a person was ignorant about the immediate knowledge or the personal obligatory knowledge, they are not excused for being ignorant about that. And if we learned it, but we don't implement it, then we will be held to account for it. So the one who didn't learn it will be held to account for not learning it. And the one who learned it, but didn't implement it, will be held to account for not implementing it. And if we learned and implemented sincerely, then we would be amongst the accepted ones to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Indeed, the scholars have carried the banner of the religious law of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam high, and they spread it in the east and the west. Yani they spread the knowledge and the details of the religious knowledge. They were minarets of guidance, by the light of which those seeking the hereafter are guided. So they excelled in spreading the religion of Allah in different fields of religious knowledge. As for the times we live in, it is the time when Al-Islam is considered strange amongst the people. So we look at who preceded us of scholars and worshippers and ascetics to search for their way and to practice their habits, for it is the best way, that way which they acquired from the sea of the beloved chosen one, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and so we would follow them in it. For indeed, the nation, the ummah, in our days will become better by what our pious salaf, the pious predecessors, were better with. How did they become better? We look at what they did. We look at their sayings and doings. We look at their habits and manners. And then we know, we have a much better idea of how they reached what they reached. And then we do what they did, sincerely. For it was said, فَتَشَبَّهُوا إِن لَمْ تَكُونُوا مِثْلَهُمْ إِنَّ التَّشَبُّهَ بِالرِّجَالِ فَلَاحٌ. It means, so imitate, even if you are not like them. For indeed, imitating the pious people is success. So insha'Allah ta'ala, in the coming classes, we will be explaining a small book named 𝗙𝗲𝗿𝘁𝗵𝗲 إلى نصيحة الولد, a father's heartfelt counsel to his son. And the author of this book is a compassionate, advising scholar, someone known for his preaching, his guidance, and his admonition. Rahimahullah wa amadana Allahu bi amdadihi. This book that he wrote was for his son, and it contains advice of good treatment of fathers to their children, meaning it shows you the good treatment of a father towards his son. Look at what this father did for his son. How many fathers do you know today that wrote a whole book for their son or daughter to advise them? Subhanallah. That takes determination. Not a lot of people would do that. Write a whole book for your son or your daughter. That shows love and dedication. And most people, even if they love their children, they don't think to do something like that, especially nowadays. They love them usually in different ways, like by feeding them and by keeping them warm when it's cold, and the like. So he advised his son during his time with this advice. And subhanallah, nowadays we are in much more need. We are much more in need of having our children and our siblings and our loved ones and our family members to listen to this advice. And that is because your child is not something that you can just neglect. Rather, you need to guide him or her and show them the right way so they don't get lost in the dunya or they end up destroying themselves. Likewise, you would extend this to your family members because you want goodness for them. This is an excellent advice. What he told him in the advice, it's excellent, mashallah. And that's why it was spread all over the world. People have been benefiting from this booklet for hundreds of years. It contains what aids a person to control their nafs and directing it to the everlasting hereafter. And it contains how to overcome the nafs, which is not an easy matter except for whomever Allah made it easy upon. And the author of this book is Al-Hafiz Abul-Faraj Abdur-RaHmaan Ibnul-Jawziyy. And he was a foremost authority in admonition. He was known for it, without any dispute. He was an example in preaching. Whenever he spoke and preached, he moved the hearts of people. He would speak in eloquent poetry and in exquisite prose naturally. And he would elaborate and he would captivate those listening. No one like him came after him. May Allah raise his rank and benefit us by him. He was also amongst the awliya. He was the standard bearer of preaching, all while possessing a good appearance. He had a good appearance. MashaAllah, Allah blessed him with a fine appearance and a pleasant voice. And he made him someone that had a great impact on the hearts and souls of people. And he had an excellent reputation. May Allah raise his rank. He was an ocean in tafsir, the knowledge of interpretation of the Quran. Very knowledgeable about the biographies of different people and history altogether. He was known for his eloquent speech and deep knowledge. He was well versed in matters of the consensus and matters of disagreement amongst the scholars. He had a strong grasp of medicine. Subhanallah, even in medicine, Allah gave him a share of that. He was knowledgeable in medicine. He possessed a great intelligence, an exceptional memory. He had sharp recall. And he was dedicated to compiling and authoring books. He also had gentle manners and praiseworthy qualities. He was revered and respected amongst both the elite and the common people of his time and even after that. No one was known to have authored as much as he did. It's known about him that 100,000 people repented because of him. And this is like at up to a particular time. Allahu A'lam, until now, how many people did. It would be way more than that. But up to a particular time, 100,000 people had repented because of him. And more than 20,000 people entered into Al-Islam through him. Imagine that. Allahu Akbar. Allah grants some people great blessings and futuhat. Subhanallah. The Prophet ﷺ told us that if one person embraces al-Islam because of you, because of one of us, then that is a reason for us to enter paradise. We would be granted paradise. He had more than 20,000 people embrace al-Islam because of him, or through him. And he authored more than 400 books. That's a lot of books. May Allah raise his rank. The caliphs, the khulafa, the rulers, and ministers attended his gatherings. As you can see, Ibnul-Jawziyy was not your average person. He was a rare person to come by, even during his time, and he lived a long time ago. He was very detached from the worldly life. And he didn't joke around with people. And when you hear that, it's not an exaggeration. He really didn't joke. You know how there are some people that they're very lighthearted, they like to joke a lot? He didn't joke. He didn't joke around with people, and he never played as a child. Think about what kind of person that would be. A person who never played, not once, as a child. He never went out with the kids to play. He didn't have that interest in playing. Think of what kind of person that would be and how that affected him in childhood, adolescence, all the way up to and into adulthood, and how that would affect the trajectory of his life. Then you hear something like he authored over 400 books, and this many people embraced Islam through him, and this many people repented on his hands. It makes sense. It starts to make more sense. You would be surprised if you close the doors to some of the distractions, how much time you would gain and how much you would be able to do. Because we have a lot of distractions. Whether they are some types of people or some things that we engage in. And he never ate anything except that he was certain of its lawfulness. Except that he was certain that the food was halal. It was acquired through a halal source. It was completely halal. And he said about himself, radiyallahu anhu, that he was granted a mind that surpassed those that were older than him, that Allah granted him that. But also the way that he was not getting involved in certain things, that type of mind would be different because it wasn't affected by those other things. Those other things, they can weaken the person's mind in different ways, and they hold the person back and they slow the person down. And so he didn't have that type of indulgence. So his mind was really sharp. MashaAllah. May Allah grant us sharp minds. Ameen. When they gathered his kararis, like notebooks, they are like not dense notebooks. They are notebooks that might have like 16 to 20 pages in every notebook. They found that he had wrote around 180 pages every single day. Every single day he was writing 180 pages. And during his time, that was a huge effort. Even now, that's a huge effort. For someone to even type on their computer 180 pages a day, you would be like, wow, this person doesn't do anything else. They just sit there and write. You would think something like that, perhaps. Nowadays, we have computers, we have phones, we have pens that are very easy to write with. And this scholar, Ibnul-Jawziyy, he lived over 1,000 years ago. Rahimahullah. So they didn't have what we have nowadays, but look at his determination. So he would sharpen his tools and he would wait for them to dry so that he can use them to write with. So imagine how long this process took and how much patience he would have to continue writing that many pages a day. Because they took his works and they counted the pages and they divided them by how long he lived, and they saw that he must have been writing 180 pages a day. Allah blesses some people's times And so they're able to do what another person would take much longer to get done. We ask Allah Ta'ala to bless our time. It was mentioned that Ibnul-Jawziyy's father passed away when he was 3 years old. So he was raised by his paternal aunt, and that his relatives were traders in copper. And when he grew up, his aunt took him to Ibn Nasir, who made him listen to a lot of knowledge. He would have him attend sessions of knowledge. And so Ibnul-Jawziyy developed a love for preaching, and he became engrossed in it while he was still a youth, delivering sermons to the people while he was still a boy. Subhanallah. Do you know what preaching is? The type of talk that moves the heart. The type of talk that moves the heart. It pushes you. You feel like you want to be better after you hear some of their speech, for example. It has an effect on your heart, or it might make you work harder for the hereafter, and fear Allah. He was also very strong against the 𝗙𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗿𝘁, those who liken Allah to the creation. The 𝗙𝗻𝗵𝗿𝘁𝗵, those who attribute to Allah attributes of the creation, body parts, and the like. And he was a follower of the Hanbali school. Ibnul-Jawziyy was a follower of the Hanbali school. He was a Hanbali. And as you might know, the 𝗙𝗵𝗿𝗁 al-Wahhabiyya and the 𝗙𝗵𝗿 in general, those who liken Allah to the creation, they attributed themselves to this school, the Hanbali school. And it's an honorable school, but subhanallah, when the Muslims saw that those who liken Allah to the creation are attributing themselves to this school, the school was defamed. The school was defamed, although originally it's a great school, and the Imam of the school is Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, one of the greatest scholars of this ummah, and he was amongst the highly righteous Muslims. So even if you look now, you will see that this school, the Hanbali school, it has the least amount of followers in the world. It's not like the Hanafi school, for example, that has the most amount of followers in the whole world, followed by the Shafi'i school, followed by the Maliki school. Then you have the Hanbali school, and it's possible you never even met someone who truly follows the Hanbali school, unless you did. But Al-Imam Ibnul-Jawziyy, he was strong in refuting those who liken Allah to the creation, and in clarifying that Allah is not like the creation, and that Allah is not a body, and that Allah is not attributed with body parts or any attribute of His creations. That Allah Ta'ala, He would teach them this, that Allah Ta'ala exists without a place and without a direction. And whatever a person imagines, Allah is not like it. And that minds cannot imagine Allah Ta'ala. Some of the Hanbalis, as we mentioned, some of those who attributed themselves to the school of Al-Imam Ahmad, they were Mujassima. They were anthropomorphists, people who ascribe a body and body parts to Allah, which is a kufr belief that takes the person out of Islam. So Al-Imam Ibnul-Jawziyy, may Allah raise his rank, he saw that there's a need to author about this and to refute them. So he refuted them in different books that he authored. Some of those books include 𝗙𝗲𝗿𝘁𝗵𝗲𝗁, which is a book that he authored to refute them specifically. He also authored a book called 𝗙𝗲𝗿𝘁𝗵𝗲𝗁 على مخالفي المذهب, also specifically to refute those who liken Allah to the creation. He also authored a book called Al-Mudhish, and other than that, in which he explicitly deemed those who liken Allah to the creation in any way that they are kuffar, blasphemers, non-Muslims. And he is a Shaykh, al-Imam, the great scholar, the great Hafiz, the interpreter of the Quran, Shaykhul Islam, the pride of Iraq, Jamaluddin Abul-Faraj Abdur-RaHmaan Ibn Ali Ibn Muhammad Ibn Ali Ibn Ubaydillah Ibn Abdillah. His lineage goes back to the scholar 𝗙𝗁𝗵 ibn Muhammad, the son of the Khalifa of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And so Ibnul-Jawziyy is thereby Qurashi, Taymi, Bakri, Baghdadi, and he is this great Hanbali preacher. He was a star amongst the stars of the Hanbali school. And he is, as we mentioned, one of the great grandsons of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. May Allah raise his rank and benefit us by him. Radiyallahu anhu. And this book is a preaching letter written by Ibnul-Jawziyy to his son Abul Qasim as an admonition. He wrote it to guide his son to follow in his footsteps in seeking the Islamic knowledge, dedicating himself to it, and to avoid relying on worldly pleasures and material indulgences. And this advice came after noticing his son's deviation from his father's righteous path. This letter serves as a means of spiritual elevation for those seeking the hereafter, and for those that are aiming for the highest ranks. It provides guidance on organizing time and dedicating it to the obedience of Allah the Exalted, day and night. And it emphasizes for one to prioritize and manage their affairs while reflecting on how the righteous Salaf occupied their time in devotion, and how they chose the clearest path to worshipping Allah Ta'ala, which then led them to honor in both this world and the hereafter. Through their sincerity and dedication, Allah Ta'ala granted them acceptance amongst the people. So he mentions throughout the advice different points or statements of people of the past so that we would benefit from that. Additionally, the letter includes essentials of belief that strengthen the certitude and increase the heart's firmness and submission to Allah. It inspires ambition and determination in worship, teaching how to balance the worldly matters, taking from this life only what aids in achieving success in the hereafter. And this is reflected in the saying of Allah the Exalted, وَابْتَغِ فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, which means, and seek the abode of the afterlife by what Allah has given you, and do not take for granted the share that you have been given in the world. In other words, that one should take from this world only what serves them on their journey toward the hereafter. And we will stop here, insha'Allah ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.